Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Couch Chronicles.
We're here.
We made it back for another episode.
Yes, this is an exciting one. I've been waiting to talk about this one.
Yes. We got a lot to talk about today. So I guess just to start us off, to check in, what are some common themes that have been coming up for you all this week? Maybe in your relationships.
I would say expectations. I noticed that there's expectation of me in terms of like how I should perform, how I should show up, or expectation of things I should be doing for people. And when I don't do them, and I notice like there's a, there's some residuals. They don't confront me though, just the residuals.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I would say that I had a lot more struggles with relationships last week.
Okay.
When I'm on my cycle, I feel like the inner voice is mad critical.
She's got something to say.
And she is critical about everything. She's critical about how I show up with my friends, how I show up with my clients, how I show up as a daughter, how I show up as a sister. And so relationships is very much a hot topic in my head. Last week. And so when I think about what were the themes that showed up for me is being okay with what I have to provide when I'm operating from a lower standpoint.
Yes.
I have a really hard
like,
time
what your
being
capacity
able
is.
to just acknowledge and accept with compassion, right? Not be digging underneath and saying all this other stuff to myself, but I have a challenge with just being like, okay, this is what I can perform at, or this is what I can show up at, and this is enough. And you're good.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I think the common themes that have been showing up for me is radical acceptance. For sure. I think that I've had to do that a lot in my relationships, and I think that there's definitely some things that I've accepted, but the radical part being like fully accepting that like this is how it is and I have control over myself and I can only navigate how I can navigate.
Facts.
So radical acceptance definitely coming up.
Yeah. But I think
For
it's
sure.
hard to do the radical part with relationships in terms of accepting like people are who they are, or I fall short that way, and being okay with that.
Yeah. It
Simple
can be.
things.
I think
And
that
also
the hardest
understanding the importance of it for your mental state
that
of mind.
part. I would say the hardest thing about the radical acceptance is relationships is just sometimes having to accept that people can't meet my needs. Like they can't give me what they don't have. So I have to perhaps figure out another
that's
way
huge.
to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or be okay not getting it.
Well, I don't know about that. I get what I want.
See, that's a sad
And I want it when I want it.
Period. I can work on that a little bit.
But I also think many people can resonate with that notion of like, I know what it is that I need in order to feel loved, feel cared for, feel like centered. And compromising that sometimes feels like too high of an order.
Yeah, especially if you like if you are a person who is like giving, you extend yourself often, it's hard to let go of like what I need to replenish.
Also,
I deserve it.
But we're going to be talking about this, but also the expectation that because I show up in that space the same way
others will
in
be
relationship and that others should. And I think that's a high expectation to put on people. One, we don't have doubles.
That's the thing
If
to
that
radically
was two
accept
of
too,
me,
right?
Yes.
Facts.
It would be great. But
Yeah.
also understanding that then it takes away from what the person can actually give to me.
Right.
So if I come with this set of like, I'm showing up this way and I want you to show up the same way, then you taking me trying to meet your needs take away from how I can really nurture another part of you that you may not notice need to be nurtured.
Yeah,
That's
I had
true.
that conversation with a client today where we were, for me and her are similar in the place where I don't actually expect people to show up. I'm actually the opposite.
just gonna get it done.
I actually give people the benefit of the doubt and almost assume that you are not going to be able
Okay,
to
older
show
sister.
up. Yeah. Hey. No, but like genuinely around, I don't expect people to show up and be there or fill a void or any of those things. And so what happens is I'm always leaning in to someone else. And there's still that residual kind of question or voice in the background that's like, how come they can't do this for me. But it's also, we talked about if you're leaning, right? The other person, if they leans too, y'all hitting heads.
Exactly.
Like, right? You know, so it's like
Exactly.
in order for them to lean into you, you have to stand straight and sit in your side
and be able
of
to
the
receive
equation.
it. Yeah,
Exactly.
and be able to receive it. You got to lean back, like old Fat Joe said. Lean back.
Okay, so like let's take it back a little bit. How do we even define relationships and like what is a relationship?
Well, a relationship is the way that I define relationship. It's a mutual agreement amongst two people that you have a connection with as it relates to your values, as it relates to your energy, because I'm huge on energy, as it relates to socially, how we view things, culturally.
Right.
I think all plays a role. And when those two people meet, then we have a commonality that kind of build into that. So whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, a coworker relationship, but to today's topic, as it relates to that romantic relationship we're going to be discussing, then that's the part.
I always kind of wonder like how we learn about relationships too. I'm curious, like how did you? I do think that like relationships, I agree that it is for sure an agreed upon. It's like a contract, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, these are some things that we agree. We might have some expectations. We might have some desires, things that we might want from each other. And I also think that there's some transaction there, which I know that can be a little bit taboo for people, but
it is.
It is, right?
Yeah,
I think that even within relationships that we sometimes identify that shouldn't be transactional, they definitely are. Like a parent and child, like there's transaction there. There is transaction within your romantic relationships. It's always going to be give and take.
Yeah.
So,
Is the contract sometimes verbally
No,
discussed or unverbal? Is that
It's an unwritten role. I mean,
Yeah,
definitely an unwritten
culturally
role.
for sure. There's so many like unspoken expectations that can come with relationships with your family, friends.
Yeah.
I think the more conversations we have about what we need in our relationships, the more fruitful and like strong, sustainable our relationships can be.
I also think that relationships you can have them with any human being, any person. You can have a relationship with your barista. You can have a relationship with your therapist. And I'm not saying that a relationship includes intimacy in terms of like physical interaction or there's exposure to that kind of like openness with each other. But I do think that when we are discussing a relationship, we're talking about things that are needed in order to function as best as you can, right? So if we're talking about like my relationship with the barista, right? We're discussing the fact that my expectations or my role in that is that I'm going to know what I'm going to order. I'm going to have the money to pay for what I'm going to order. That other person's role is that they're going to know how to make the coffee right, and they're going to know how much it is, and then make sure they give me the right change.
Exactly.
That we both need to be acting and performing within our role in order for that relationship to be beneficial.
Yeah.
I'm
right?
glad that you brought up the idea of roles, right? Because I think that sometimes we can almost get stuck in roles in relationships, roles that don't necessarily serve us all the time. You might start off in one role or just like develop some roles throughout your life. As a kid, you might have the role of being the fixer in your family. Or just being the problem solver. And then you get into romantic relationships and maybe find that role is not as aligned with your own self-care, your own
not necessarily relationship though, because change is the only constant because you're changing.
Yeah.
You know, what you might have been able to give at one point, you may no longer are able to do that or have the energy or the desire to do
our capacity
that.
changes.
Right. And because you're changing, the way you used to serve in these different entities, you may not have the desire to continue to serve in those entities.
Right.
So I think it's also, it's not that, it's both in, right? It's that it may not work for in this setting, and at the same time, if we're looking at the self, because I think we got to go back to the self, is that because I'm changing, I may have been okay doing everything back then, but now
Right.
My life
capacity is
changed,
different.
things changed. So I gotta.
So you're talking about flexibility in relationships.
Yes, ma'am.
today.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I think also something that you had brought up was this concept of like transactions being part of and something to expect in a relationship. But what are you guys' thoughts about unconditional love? I feel like that's a topic that people throw around when it comes to relationships, especially when they're talking about the parental relationship and people feeling like they missed out on this unconditional love growing up from their parents and then are almost searching for that in their intimate
Unpopular
relationships or
opinion.
friendship.
I did not really know that I believe in that outside of Jesus Christ. If you're a
Thank
Christian.
you.
I
Thank
think that
you.
human relationships
Thank you.
are simply transactional.
They're
And
conditional.
they
They
don't have
can
to be.
provide-
There are
yes.
just simply conditions.
Yeah.
In a romantic relationship, even within like relationships, like your parent relationships, there's
Yeah.
conditions there. There's
Yes.
conditions that
Agreed.
you might have to fulfill yourself as a child, and there's also conditions that your parents have to feel, like having the capacity, knowledge, skill set to provide for you.
Yeah, agreed. No, I agree with you. I 110%. The only person that can love me unconditionally as a spiritual person is God and God alone. And I think people, because of what was it met, I think it's unfair to not even a romantic partner. Sometimes people expect their friends
Yes.
to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
To love them with that kind of, with
to
this
accept them.
unconditional
Yeah.
And sometimes
stuff.
I think the unconditional is
Unconditional love.
weaponized in a way
It
where it's like,
is.
Because
I
you're
can
supposed to love
treat
me
you,
unconditionally.
I can literally treat you less than I would allow you to treat me.
Exactly.
But you're still supposed to just take me in because, well,
Exactly.
you know my heart.
Right.
You know that
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of person. But it's
Right.
like, I may know that, but how you're showing up is in direct contradiction
right.
to that experience.
Yeah.
And it's actually invalidating to me
Right.
to pretend that that is not the case.
Yeah.
And that happens
Yeah.
a lot
Yes.
in not only friend relationships, but in those lovely romantic relationships
sure.
as well.
But you know, it's the show, the movie, was it You Complete Me? Foolishness. I think they all go hand in hand with unconditional love. I think when that movie
I
came
think
out,
that it's just
and they're
we're
all
fed
having-
that, right?
yes.
We're conditioned to believe that that's a thing.
culture,
Fairy tales,
But-
hello.
But when we
Yes.
really think about like our actual relationships in life, which ones of them do you feel like are not some sort of condition or transaction? Exactly.
And it takes a while to recognize that and then not feel disappointed
Yeah.
or angry.
yeah.
Because in some way it feels like you are supposed to be getting something that was promised to you that you are not. So then the question is, what's wrong with me
Right.
that I am not
Getting what I deserve.
receiving this unconditional kind of love? Or what is wrong with the people that I am interacting with that they're not able to, receive this?
Yeah.
So it kind of perpetuates this thing of like, oh, there's broken people, there's not good people that are unable to do this. But I think we were trying to reach and attain something that actually wasn't realistic
Yeah.
But
or there.
and I hate to blame media.
No, for sure.
But
You
I
can't
do-
blame media for
But media does. Media plays.
holding back.
Yeah, they play a huge role because it goes to the whole idea. Within the fairy tale, I was not a girly girl, so this is a good thing for me too. But fairy tale always irked me around the idea of happily ever after.
Yes.
Because it's not the reality. So we are fed these things at an early age, and now if you're looking at social media now and how the media really perpetuate, like the Cosby Show, look at that relationship between a husband and a wife, right? How it should be, right? Or even if you look at these different shows that kind of like perpetuate the idea of this is what the life you should have is normal. And how many percentage of people actually do have
That type
that
of
life that is
relationship.
perpetuated on
Yeah.
media?
Very
in the
small
media.
percent.
I think that you mentioned something else about media too that stood out to me, just around like how relationships, we're kind of fed this idea of like happily ever after is the end goal based on certain contingencies.
Yes.
Like based on someone perhaps being like in a damsel in distress and like needing saving, and the other person having the capacity to do the saving.
Exactly.
So it kind of creates this culture of like, here are the steps to getting your happily ever after, which, hate to break it to y'all, it's a lie.
Let me tell you something.
Or they stopped the story short.
Yeah.
So notice how, because I wouldn't say it's a complete lie. I do think that fairy tales represent the honeymoon period.
Yeah,
that initial infatuation and that warmth and that everything is possible and everything is going to be great and then we rode off in the sunset. But it does not ever give you what happens post that when we inevitably come down.
How do you sustain
from
life
that
together?
Well, they reward it after, but they don't show the after.
Right.
Okay, that's the part. They don't show the after part. And there is an after. There's a happily, there's more afters. There's a ever, the ever meaning there's no such thing as ever. There's gonna be a mistake and a flaw there in the relationship. So do expect those things. But I do think we gotta really, as a people and as a society, just walk away with the fact that let me learn to accept my life and my experiences, because that's how you're going to show up in these relationships and romantic relationships
as yourself.
But if you keep trying to be like the Cosbys or be like these celebrities who
or be like
whoever
people's expectations, other people's
expectations, it does not fit into your own experiences. And that's really what we have to take into account when we're going into relationships and dating and marriage and whatever, or lifetime partner, whatever it is. You got to look at the fact, okay, what was my history?
For sure. I think that even sustaining relationships sustaining that after, right? It takes a lot of conversation and discussion about your expectations,
as a
desires,
relationship
all the time, not just at the beginning when we're in that talking phase and we're talking on the phone all day. It's like
we got to
forever.
Keep talking about it.
We're always checking into those expectations and desires. So
why do people think it's, because I find that there is this notion that talking about the future and your expectations in the relationship is cringy.
I think
did we get
I think that comes from a place of people's own insecurities, like their own feelings of not being enough.
Agreed.
If I'm coming, I'm coming with my stuff. I've taken care of myself. I can figure my stuff out. I'm gonna spoil myself. So if I'm coming with that energy already, and I'm setting an expectation that this is what I'm also expecting from you when you come into this relationship as a bonus to what I've already got going on.
Exactly.
Sometimes people are met with feelings of inadequacy. You just don't feel like I can reach that. I can attain that.
In Stephanie, to your point of short-lived, a lot of people leave relationships because they don't get that happily ever after, and they're not willing to, and you keep jumping from relationship to relationship and wondering, like, is it me? Why is it not working? What's that? No, that means life is happening, and when it gets to a difficult part that makes you feel uncomfortable, that connects to your own sense of inadequacy, then you escape, you leave. So sometimes people end up ending relationships that could actually be healthy
because they can't take the heat.
There you go.
And
that's why they always come back, Chair. They always come back.
No spinning the block, sorry.
Don't repeat and retweet.
That's honestly, that's worth a conversation though about spinning the block. Because I do think that there is a negative connotation around going back to previous partners. But I also think it's something worth discussing, because if we, like you said, the change is constant. Even though that was an old partner, that person has made, to some degree, there are some changes, but even you yourself has shifted and changed. Now, are you aware of how those changes impact your worldview? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But I do think that sometimes it is not as regressive, like I'm taking a step backward as people make it out to seem.
I don't think so either. I think that sometimes you have unfinished business, like in the sense of like there was maybe some things that we needed to work through before like the actual end.
And repetition sometimes is what helps us really like be like, actually, I'm now secure in what I knew or what I was able to kind of like pick up from this last time. And maybe I needed to kind of almost take the test again. Kind of
like, you know, like run it back one more time.
Just, you know, like.
But and also the thing with changes, and we'll keep going after this. But the thing with change is also that yes, the person may come back and spin the block, but did they realize they made the change for themselves?
Right.
So meaning like the changes is like you're going to notice that, yes, you changed, but if you're going to allow them to come back, you can't be looking or asking for, well, what change did you make? Because my expectations would be the change that I desired. But if the person didn't make changes, or the changes they made was to benefit their quality of life, it may not work.
It may not fit into what I need. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so like with all of this, how do you really know that like you're ready to date?
So let me ask y'all, because I'm the single person out of the group here.
First of all,
right?
We all were single at some point too.
Well,
right?
I'm talking about right now.
Okay.
So yes, in this day and age, right? Do I have to have everything together? Do I need to make sure that I've healed all my trauma and relationship problems? Do I need to make sure that I'm not still making mistakes in relationships in order? Is that what I need in order to get back into the dating field?
There's not a, no.
No?
No.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception.
It's a huge misconception. You're ready to date. I knew when I was ready to date, when I was in a state of I was enough for me. That doesn't mean I may not be triggered by some past traumas. That doesn't mean I didn't have some stuff that I was still working on. But the key thing I realized is like, okay, Jay, you enough for you. So then when I go out there, I'm not looking for that instant gratification or validation of like, oh my God, he said hi. Oh my God, he thinks I'm pretty. Oh my God, he actually wants to talk to me. Oh my God, like there was none of that. It was
So no to you needing to be healed, all put together.
Absolutely
but
not.
Yes to having some sense of like self-love, self-compassion, like
being okay with me.
Security,
efficacy, definitely security.
Some security. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I think I'm the best person. No, I'm okay enough where when I'm ready to go out there, I'm not taking every rejection as something personal. Is wrong with me.
Right.
If I'm still doing that, I may need to take a step back.
But I also think what you said kind of alludes to you're ready to date when you're not using dating as a means to try to avoid not feeling like you're enough or trying to prove that
How do you even know when that's happening?
I can give you an example. It's like when you come out of a breakup, right, and you feel like the breakup ended prematurely, and you're trying to somehow like prove to a part of you that you are desirable, even though that like situation is unresolved, gray, and weird. It's like that desire to hop in before you fully let that particle settle in that relationship. That's when you know you're doing stuff prematurely. Like things are still the forecast is still quite gray. The clouds have yet to really kind of like spread, and the sun is coming through, and you're immediately jumping into the next thing. I know for me, I wasn't ready for dating when I went through my breakup a couple years ago, because I was still very lost. And I still found myself trying to make sense of the past relationship or try to understand what was going on there, what happened. Because I'm very much like a facts kind of person. Like if you tell me, oh, you cheated. So to me, I'm like, okay, that's what happened. I did not cheat. Just one was yawning. I did not cheat. What's it called in the relationship? But I'm just saying, like, if there's a concrete reason, it's easier for me to put things to bed. There was not a concrete reason, and so I found myself spinning about what wasn't. I was definitely not in a place to try to go into another relationship as my forecast there was still not gray. The shit was fucking black. Like it was like I didn't know what was up from down, side from left, like all of those different things. 2 years later, I can see that also the anxiety about getting on dating apps or getting back into dating is way reduced. Because it was all about, well, what if this happens? And what if this? And what if they see me this way? And what if they sexualize me? And what all this thing, because I was very uncomfortable around being in a secure relationship, knowing what to expect, knowing like what to receive for a person, to then all of a sudden not really knowing what I'm going to be met with when I go into the dating world. And it is it can be scary. It's a very strange place in the dating world these days.
I think for me, I had to kind of touch the fire to know that it was hot. So I had to learn how to advocate for myself in relationships. I had to learn how to I had to learn more about who I was and like what I desired and what I wanted. But the way my path just kind of took me through that through having relationships. So I think in the past I kind of viewed that more as like, girl, you're like a serial monogamous. Like you having relationships. But now I think I view it more like I just needed to learn the lesson. I needed to kind of figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. And once I was able to get to a point where I was not necessarily holding on to relationships or like have a more healthy attachment with the relationship, like it's not ownership. The relationship ending doesn't necessarily reflect on like my own worth or who I am. Then I was able to talk more about what I wanted. I fully like manifested my girlfriend. Like I'm like, I know that this year is gonna be the year that it is.
I agree. You know,
this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I want this person to come with. And I think I met her like 30 days after that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we sort of had the same path.
Right. We talking about Sierra's prayer. What's Turquoise prayer?
But no, I literally manifested my partner as well. I knew I was going to meet my partner that year. I just didn't know that it would be like I would move as fast as
Quickly,
I did. Does that make sense? And that's something to kind of actually look at with the show that we're going to talk about around that. But it was in a sense of I knew going back into I was dating for 4 years prior to getting married. Right. So let's be clear about that. But I was super intentional about the boundaries I set for myself around dating.
I loved the way you dated, by the way. That was so inspiring to me.
I was super intentional because I would, if I meet someone and we connect and we're dating, and I know, I had to talk to my young clients. Dating for me in my generation, I'm in 80s, baby. And my generation is in a sense of like, we're getting to know each other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we move into a relationship when for me, it's like after a 2 months, 3 months mark, okay, are we exclusively with each other?
Right.
So to me, that's how I took it. So any relationship that I felt like connect with, like it went on, but let's say after 7 or 8 months, we both realized, or I realized, okay, this is not for me. And it still may hurt to some capacity, but with the perimeters I put for myself, because I used to take this long breaks together, I give myself literally 30 days and I shut down in 30 days, meaning I ironed out, okay, what you felt, how you felt, what took away, what is it that you feel like you need to learn to work on, or what is it that was missing for you?
That reflection piece.
And I jumped right back in. I did not allow myself to just kind of like, oh, this is trash. I didn't, all that, I couldn't, I'm tired. I did not, because that, to me, when I was doing that, it was something that was missing for me.
It makes you pumped because I've been there. It's the thing of like all these thoughts. What it does is increase the likelihood that you're not going to put your foot in the water.
Yeah,
because it's like, well, why would I do that if this and this and this and this and this? And so I have been very much trying to adopt a little bit of like that leap of faith because that's what radical
because the thing is you have to, right?
Yourself.
Because I noticed when I was doing that, it was my own fear about me that was keeping me away from that because I took that rejection as like, Jay, something's wrong with you. Yes. When I really did my work, and this is what I mean about when you're ready to date, I was like, okay, you need to sit back. Why are you personalizing this ghosting stuff? And why are you personalizing this? And I had to realize that, oh, you still feel like you're not enough. Right. You still feel like you're not okay. Yeah. So I spent time doing that work. So fast forward to 4 years ago when I was ready, that was that. I had a relationship prior to meeting my husband that was actually went longer than it probably should have, right? Yeah. But I also knew when to kind of cut it off. Does that make sense? So that one went on for about 1.5 years. But then when it came down, okay, where is this going? When the conversation, and when I cut, I cut it off. Yeah. And then you fast forward to 2 months later, or 3 months later, I meet my husband. But I didn't know where that was going either. But I kind of went full throttle with that.
Right, you were committed to it.
But you were disciplined because what you just said is in that 4 years before you met your husband, is that you had created a structure, a plan around how you were going to date. And yes, there was a layman person who kind of like tested the boundaries that you had put in place, and you know, like,
But
we're gonna be vulnerable, but exactly,
it needed to happen.
It definitely
because
did.
What that relationship did is it got me ready for him.
It did, but also it helped
opened me up to to the fact that, hey, you actually can be vulnerable and fall in love with someone within a short period of time. Because otherwise I would have rejected my husband.
And you're more confident and secure. That's what I'm saying. Like, the discipline that you built over the last 4 years allowed you to be able to let something like that go that was very meaningful to you, and you not, like you said, personalize it or take it in as more than just, this was something that I did put my time, energy, and faith into, and it did not amount to what I wanted, but that's not more than that. I have a hard time doing that because investing time, energy, love, support, resources is a lot for me, and it's like a very, to me, it's priceless, what I bring in. And so when I feel like I'm giving that to someone and they are not protecting it, or I feel like they just kind of dropped it in that way, the fear that came for the future is, what if I lose out on that piece of me again? But I forget that it's like, it's valid. Not like I didn't lose it, like, but it hurt. It makes me sometimes feel like that part is just.
But what I was trying to get you to kind of hone in and tap into is that sometimes relationships are not necessarily about us, for us, the ones that ended.
Yes.
The impact that we make in people's lives was just that. The impact that I made in the people I interacted with was just that.
Yeah.
So you have to remind yourself that you didn't lose that piece of you. You shared that piece of you that improved someone's quality life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take it because that piece of you feel like you lost, you didn't lose it because it's still in you.
Yeah.
It is you. Sharing it and knowing that there's this expectation of the outcome that would have been, because I share that part of me, and that's the part of the expectation, is that it wasn't met. So for you, you feel like now you've taken it. No, now someone have benefited, and the quality of life improved because you shared it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of shift gears a little bit, because I want to kind of talk more about how we might be seeing relationships and love and romantic relationships in the media, like specifically shows that we watch. I don't know if you guys have been watching Love is Blind.
You have us watching.
Yikes.
You have us watching it. Yikes is correct.
And you know what?
Yikes is
They
correct.
might all need therapy.
They all might need therapy.
All need it.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. I know there's a screening to get on these shows.
Is there?
No, for sure. But this one being particularly in the DMV was funny to me, because I immediately thought, who are they going to have on here? And when they first like released who the cast was going to be, there was like this uproar on the internet of like, this is not a real DMV representation. And I'm like, did y'all think this was going to be Mo is Blind? Like, it's not going to be like,
Exactly.
what did you think was going to happen?
I think they tried to do one that was like black.
Right.
So, like, it wasn't Love is Blind. It was another one.
I think I've seen it, and it wasn't good either.
Also, showing the damn. They might be therapy too.
OWN have that show. Damn, I can't think of it. With but that sort of is like the black version of it, where they all move in and live. Ready to Love.
Yes.
Is on OWN.
Yes.
But Love is Blind is scary to me, because every season it gets more and more
extreme,
psychologically frightening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, watching it as a therapist, I'm like,
it's hard watching these shows as therapists. I think
trauma.
Right.
And you're thinking about like the short amount of time they're interacting with each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is the screening process like? Because it does not. I don't think that I've watched Love is Blind in several seasons where I felt like people are coming for love.
No.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these shows, I think, it's rare that it's like dating on the website, right? So dating on the website is one of those things where a lot of people say they want a lifetime partner, they're looking for their person, but really they have ulterior motives, looking for a status. I think that's what these shows do.
At this
point, I think the novelty of it is like, I'm going to be on TV,
completely.
I'm going to be this,
and I'm going to have thousands of followers, millions of followers later.
So it gets misconstrued. Like, am I really, out of all the cast, there might be 2 or 3 people
that are
actually there for that. And you could actually tell right off the jump who those people are because of how focused they are about themselves and how focused they are about like, I'm ready, right? So if you look at like a Hannah,
what have you seen? Like, what are some themes that you've been seeing in this season?
You know, you have me watching this show, chat, because I don't watch shows like this. But I had to take I had to brought my notebook today. I had to bring my notebook
today. Y'all, she got receipts, folks.
I had to bring my notebook because I was like, I watched the first episode and then the recent one, and I went back. One of the things that I noticed is that a lot of the women on the shows are, there's a sense of, I'm going to present myself this way so I can depict me, so I can get picked.
And unfortunately, that is cultural to this area.
Yeah. So I can get picked. Because even if you look at your Ashleys, your Hannahs, there's just 2 Ashleys, the Monicas, because I got to write this name down because I can't keep up with all this shit. But that part, I had to do that. And the men came with a set of fucking traumas. I love the fact that they were vulnerable.
Yes.
But they're still.
It also feels fast.
It's
like almost like the vulnerability. You're weaponizing it in some way.
Yes.
That's what kept coming up for me. Like, and I know that you are supposed to like get to know the person quickly in that short amount of time. And there are certainly things that you want to know about a person before committing to marrying them. At the same time, it almost feels like some people were putting their trauma out there to like kind of get the sympathy to pull the person in.
And that's exactly what I felt like they were using it. And at the same time, it looked like I want this person to fulfill me in that way. So let me tell them how I have been hurt.
Yes.
And then,
so like it's like,
so then a lot of these women, I noticed a lot of
the one that's talking about all the money he has.
All the money he has.
But then you're fearful. You're so fearful of
people
person wanting you for money. But that's literally
that's what you led
with that conversation.
But okay. Well, let's bring it back though. Let's talk about why people do that. Okay, the reason why, specifically for men in the DMV. Let's also be very clear about where we are at.
Yeah.
Status and money is huge.
It is.
It is one of the. It is literally the first thing that you are met with. What do people ask you after they say, "What's your name and what's your IG?
What do you do?
What's your job? What do you do?"
That's the first thing they do because that is so. I know that this is something that makes me desirable. Makes me likable. Right. And I'm also fearful that people only see me as this thing. And that is literally the plight of.
I kind of feel sad for them for that.
No, for sure.
No, for sure. I empathize with men.
Because think about for women, we don't want people to sexualize us, but at the same time, we don't want a partner who doesn't find it.
But it's both and. Where the man is like, the woman is like, I have to look, if I dress this, that I'm going to be more catchy. The man is like,
I'm
okay.
going to catch a certain type.
Yeah, the man is like, well, let me show up, not only just look good, because women, we are, all aesthetically pleasing to that. Both
But
sexes.
there's some women that be looking, what shoes, how much are your shoes cost? Oh, what's your watch? Oh, and mind you, I've never done that, but in the DMV, very common as how people figure out your status.
and then to the sense, it's like for men, it's like, okay, let me make sure I got the job, I'm doing this, I have this car, let me tell them, let me come and give my resume. A lot of time I was dating, when I couldn't even ask them, well, what do you enjoy? Like, what's your family? It's more like, they literally give me a CV, they give me a resume.
Right, here you go.
Because they, for the longest time, a lot of people I've dated early on, it takes probably a month or 2 months to actually for them to know what I actually do for a living. Even the fact that I used to tell people I work for myself.
Oh, I would say
that alone.
That
alone with me saying I work for myself just had this like, and then that's when the resume started.
Adequacy. Well, I deserve. I can keep up with that.
Exactly. Because there's ways that men are caretakers, natural caretakers, that does not come with that having that top job with that finances. Because trust and believe, your blue collar man can still take care of you financially and make a contribution.
Right, and you
build me something.
Exactly. So it's interesting to me. But yes, in the DMV,
but unfortunately, you're right. Blue collar workers are not seen.
They're not seen
as the same like.
Well, maybe we also don't live in a largely.
You're right. We
area.
Even though. Yes and no. I would say in DC is known for their black, affluent, white collar type things. But there's plenty of people in Maryland who the HVAC who do what's it called the plumbing, it's very big in this community. However, back to what you said about like, why are people showing up in this way? And why is that affecting the quality of your relationships? Because if you are performing, I want to show up as not only my best self, but the self
that I think will be accepted.
That will be exactly. And so I'm doing this. Eventually, time, energy, and putting that up is going to break down. I'm going to collapse. It's going to be too much, or I'm going to be scared. You're going to catch me. You're going to figure out I'm not who I am.
Right.
So I'm going to.
But that's what happened with that Tyler character.
Yeah, because he was performing a lot.
But remember when she came back, she was just like, what I felt was our superpower, she said, because they were connecting, they had love, they kind of blend in. And now he dropped this bombshell about the sperm donating,
which was also a lie.
Yeah. So then she's all feeling like, okay, well now what? I don't know what to do.
Right. Yeah. Because now I've been met with something that is like, now I'm questioning myself of how did I miss it?
And that's exactly what she said.
That's happened to me where, you know, I am a put together Black woman. Yeah. And a lot of my partners already assume that I want something from, like, or I'm expecting them to show up in a particular way.
Your last partner,
based upon, like, you know, how... You're so shady.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Based upon
she met the model, and she thought she was a model, too. But
anyway, I'm like, look,
they thought they were model,
like,
too.
I have to...
Let me act right.
Yes, please.
I apologize.
Finish. Like,
sorry, I apologize. I apologize.
So, like I said, like, they feel like they have to show up in whatever, like, will get me to accept them or take them in. Yes. And then I'm operating because
I'm thinking we just...
Because I'm authentic.
Thank you.
I'm not lying. I'm not doing this. And then all of a sudden, you gonna put this, and it very much hits you like literally Hiroshima. Because it's like, wait, you just literally unraveled everything. Now what do I do?
I also think about how like so many spaces for survival have required Black people to perform. Being in a relationship with me, I need to be able to just be myself. I cannot perform for you, perform at work, perform in these certain spaces. I can't. And I think that has also been more of a part of that helped me feel ready to date, ready to have a relationship. Is having to learn that, like, I don't have to perform in none of these places.
And how did you get there? Because I think yours is like, it was a
trial and error.
It
was a slow practice because I think that I still held on to a lot of beliefs around like you're supposed to be a certain way in order to get certain things.
And that those expectations was placed on you, right?
And so it took a lot of like just learning and self-reflection around like, okay, what's your actual experience? Not what you think is going to happen, but what is your actual experience? When you are engaged in this way, I'm not leaving this feeling fulfilled. I'm leaving this feeling tired, feeling stretched, feeling like it's taken a lot out of me.
And I'm actually angry later on. I'm
Talk
actually
about
very
and confused.
Very much on edge around like this whole situation. But I also think something that you said makes me question, do people even know they're performing?
No. And I mean, I don't know about everyone, but I do definitely think that Black people, particularly ones in this area, don't always know that it's a performance.
Exactly, because it's so much ingrained in the culture and is actually a thing of survival.
Yes,
it's routine, survival. It's how I get people to take me seriously. It's how I get people to not kill me. It's how I get people to not do these things, right? So we go back to Love is Blind, which we're going to talk about that a few other ways in different times in our other episodes. But if we look at like, okay, how do you know when you're ready for a relationship? Or how do you know when you're performing as a means to protect yourself from rejection?
It don't feel like anybody on that show even asked them that question. Asked themselves that question before filling out the application.
Definitely not.
No,
definitely
because
not.
Even if you had the biracial couple, the Monica and the Steven, you know, it was super interesting to me, but I would digress with that. But I think the fact that he was okay telling her like he didn't have a job, he didn't have this, and she normalized that it was okay, knowing that for her this was also a value system and it wasn't. And then she was showing to be enough for him, but then he got dismissed from the show because he was also engaging in other women and having these like erotic things. So now she was crushed because I pour all this out and I was gonna be at everything for you. He was looking for sexual pleasures, and she was literally talking about like, I've done this, we've been doing this, and he keep talking about all these fantasies, and she trying to meet, just to turn around, she caught him texting.
Yeah.
And doing all of that. So there's a sense of like, let me just settle. How about the idea of just let me just settling because I have someone. I feel like a lot of these relationships
it's
people
very,
feel like
or it's like a cool story to tell.
Exactly. I have a partner, I have a boyfriend, I have a girlfriend, I have this person.
Someone.
I have
not
someone,
alone.
so I'm not alone. So the idea, like, it's okay if I let this slide. It's okay if this happened. It's okay I settled.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to 10, 15 years later, they whether it's a long-term relationship or marriage they get into, they're in my office talking about that's not who I married.
And mind
exactly.
you,
that is who you.
And
were
mind
with.
you, a lot of folks, it doesn't even take 10 years.
No, they know right away. You just commit to it.
It's coming in very hot. Like, and I also think that what you had said is that, like, there's a difference between compromise and sacrifice.
Right.
Yes.
And a lot of people are sacrificing to their detriment.
Yep.
Because to me, compromise is worthy when you are in pursuit of something that is meaningful and important to you. So, for example, for me, it is very important that my partner is compassionate, is kind, and also is ambitious, right? Now, ambitious looks different, right?
It does.
So maybe, I might compromise on someone who wants to make $300,000, $400,000 a year, right? That's to me is what I would want in a partner, right? Real stable. I'm willing to compromise and say, okay, we'll do 200,000 as long as you do this, 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 and this. I'm not compromising and saying, oh no, I'll take $50,000 and you're not kind and you're not compassionate and you're not splitting on. To me, that's too many things that you're not getting that you want. And that's actually not moving me in the direction of what it is that I want.
Exactly.
And I will be resentful and I will be unfulfilled and I will be all these things that will implode the relationship.
Okay. So am I a bad therapist if I struggle in relationships?
No, you human before you're a therapist again.
Facts.
So therefore, my humanness is separate from my therapist.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's funny you ask that, because sometimes when I do clinical supervision or even when we talk, is in the sense of a lot of therapists, well, how can I advise and guide my client through their relationship? And I turn around and look at mine and I'm blind to my own experiences.
Yeah, I don't even know that it's like a blindness. I try to think about it from this perspective. If I do just therapy full time, I've had 22 relationships this week that I've been talking about, that I've been checked into, that I've been catering to, pouring into. That does not include my personal relationships. So it is very easy for therapists in particular to struggle in relationships because sometimes there's just not enough
Too
left
many
in
of them
the
to
tank.
juggle.
Yes.
There's not enough left in the tank. I've already had 22 relationships that I'm catering to this week.
Yeah.
And then I'm also expected to like be a daughter, be a cousin, be a mom, be a sister,
be a partner.
And let them not know that you're a therapist too. So they're doubly going to come to you because they feel like you have a capacity that,
or you simply have the knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because sometimes when I'm done with work and I had like this one day this week, you look at my schedule, I literally saw 6 couples back to back. That's
a lot of
what
relationships.
The actual FJ. But then when I'm done with work and I'm kind of like burnt out, and I look at my husband, or he may just little things he may say or do, and I'm like, I don't have it.
I don't have the capacity. Exactly.
And then there's a guilt internally that I experience.
There's some shame around that
I don't have it. And then I don't think I'm explaining enough for him to understand, like, this is why I don't have it.
Yeah. I think that is an important part of, like, who you might choose to be in a relationship with as a therapist. Like, you definitely need someone who can understand. It's literally not you, it's me. It's me needing to, like, have some space to replenish and needing to be in relationships where the person is not requiring me to give something all the time.
Exactly. Because it was so funny, because I'll tell it real quick. He simply just wanted to get ice cream, and then all he said was like, well, let's take this car. Like, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to go. It was just like I have to use my brain. And then he was excited and he just wanted to like wind down my day. But at the same time, to me, the fact of changing and my brain went into too much
exhaustion.
Exactly.
And it was like, actually, I'm just gonna shut down.
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, this was on me. My bad. Like, so no, I don't think a therapist is a bad therapist.
I think it also sometimes makes it hard to be in a relationship as a therapist because there can be some preconceived notions, right? Like there can be this energy of you're a therapist, so you have the tools, you always have it together, you won't be triggered.
Yes.
When you are triggered, you won't act an ass.
Right.
And like,
how about the judgment is that they do say, the mental people, they're mental themselves.
Right.
Like those comments.
Or that you're trying to therapize me if I want to ask more questions.
Exactly.
No, that's triggering word for me.
Yeah, so it's like, I think that we've all experienced that in some capacity, but needing to know, like, yes, we are certainly going to come with things with the knowledge that we have, and we have to have relationships with people that can accept that.
Good deal.
What about like maybe other challenges that therapists might also have is overly empathizing.
Overly empathizing?
Like, I can empathize or justify or understand.
How about some transference in this joint?
Understanding yourself into a hole.
Transference happen and really therapists don't even know sometimes with their clients they're transferring until like they're pulled away. I think your supervisee that I did in group with was like the male was their client. But the way the male was showing up in his marriage was triggering for her. And then she was like, well, he cannot understand. Like, no, your wife is acting this way because you did this and you did that. I said, well, who's your client? Because the whole time they were talking, I thought the wife was the client. But when they told me it was the husband, and I'm like, okay, let's slow you down, honey. What happened? And I think they realized, oh, shit. That's when it clicked on them. Like, oh shit, you're right. Like my mom dealt that with my dad, and not only that, I myself experienced cheating. So therefore, I empathize more with the wife. You can relate, and that's the part where you got to take a step back.
And that's how transfer subtly kind of infiltrates its way within a real, the therapeutic space, right? Is that way. But I also think about how when you are dealing with an adolescent and their parents are showing up in ways. I deal with a lot of supervisees who have a hard time figuring out how to balance the relationship with an adolescent and the parent, and they find themselves almost like teen against the parent, and I'm like, whoa, like how did we all of a sudden start picking sides and all of and you can tell in how they talk. It's like, well, why are they expecting this from the kid and they're doing this and that, and it's like, yeah, I get it. At the same time, we don't know how the client presents when they're with the parent. Like that, there is so many different aspects of that. So no, you're not a bad therapist if you have trouble empathizing with a parent or empathizing with the problem person in your client's life. But you also want to be very, very careful about getting entangled in the client's narrative and relationship because you are now becoming one of their friends and they're venting to you about, and that's not your role.
That's not the boundary. Okay,
right,
so let's
wrap
it up. What are our takeaways about relationships and how we want to keep them going?
I guess I should get myself back into the dating field.
You should. We keep pushing you. But
my friend looking for somebody else.
Okay. Hey!
Not y'all,
were we serious about the 300K or we just?
Oh no!
I was
that was my example.
That was an example. She's not looking at the 300K, but if you do have it, she's not.
I want $1 million.
Right. That part. No, just the idea of keep in mind that I'm ready to date, or even in the relationships that I'm in, there has to be space for me to be authentically me, and also maybe me learning what authentically me actually is or mean. So that's my takeaway around it.
All right. Well, definitely like, subscribe, check us out on our next episode, and we will see you all again soon.
All right. Bye.
Sparkle time.